Have you ever had a print that should have came out perfect, but it ended up looking like this or this? Came out stringy, gaps, peeled up, so popping noises coming from the nozzle. Not that your printer is trash, you don't need a new one. So most of the time it's not gonna be your printer or anything, or your settings or anything else. It's gonna be your filament. It's crazy, wild, I know. Today I'm going to test the Space Pie filament dryer from Creality, and this is the dual dryer here. We're gonna test this. I'm gonna show you guys the settings for it, how to operate it, how to run it, the outcome of drying spools, how you can print while the filaments are inside of the unit as well, because you can print from this straight into your printer as well. We're gonna go through all the settings. I'm gonna show you guys. We're gonna do a deep dive, hashtag deep dive. You already know, guys. So yeah, so let's get into this, guys. Let's go, let's go. So in this video, guys, I'm going to show you how I set up the Space Pie, how to use it while printing, and how to identify if your filament is wet. There are key factors and key symptoms, if you want to call them symptoms. I don't know. But there are key things that you got to pay attention to, some noises and popping. I'll show you guys in this video. So we're going to do a deep dive into those in this video. So filament is like a sponge. Over time, it can absorb moisture from the air, especially if you live somewhere humid, leave spools out, or open a new roll and forget about it. And when that moisture hits the hot end, it can flash into steam. That's when you get popping, cracking sounds, stringing that won't go away, brittle filament snapping, blobs and zits on the surface, and sometimes even weak layer adhesion, which that is what I am super familiar with, weak layer adhesion. So this is the Space Pie. The whole idea is simple controlled heat for a set amount of time to pull moisture out of the filament without cooking or deforming it. So what I like about this dryer, guys, is that it's not just a set it and forget it type of dryer. It becomes part of your actual printing process. So especially for me, like I use the dual dryer because I print a lot and I have a lot of spools, and obviously I like to dry more spools at once, which makes sense to me as someone that has multiple printers. Being able to dry two spools but also hook them up to the printer at the same time while you're printing is a huge benefit for me, because I love being able to dry mine as I use them, and then also drying them with the dual dryer and then placing the other spools into a better storage and then drying more spools. Those are key benefits for me and why I prefer the spool dryer. So the setup for this, guys, is very simple. It's basically you open it up, take it out of the box, flip the lid open, put your spools in, shut the lid, turn the settings on to the type of filament that you're drying, feed the filament out of the feed holes on top. There's two for the dual and obviously a single one for the single. Feed them out through the top, and then there you go. You're set and ready to go. It's starting to dry at this point. So there's going to be a few things to look for whenever you're purchasing a dryer. The first thing I'm going to do outside of the box, and I recommend everybody should do, is bring it out, open the lid, make sure the lid opens and shuts and has a really good tight seal, because obviously if you're drying something that's producing heat inside, if it doesn't have a good seal, it's not going to hold that heat in there to actually dry out and dry up the moisture that's inside. So checking the seal on the lid, making sure that the filament easily feeds through the top. You don't want to have it where the filament gets snagged or like kind of rough to push through the feed holes on top, because then obviously you're going to have feeding problems on your printer too if you're going to use this in tandem with your printer. So those are two things that I tend to look for in a dryer. So for me, these are going to be my quick settings on how I utilize the Creality dual dryer. So I'm going to place two spools in there, and I typically place the same type of filament because there are presets for each type of filament. So it's going to be PLA, PETG, TPU, and ABS, and etc. So there are presets on the dryer itself. Those are a great starting point. I would recommend using those at first, but depending on your situation and where you print that, for me, I'm in a basement, so the air is pretty much the same all year long, but it is very humid. In my climate, my area, it's humid. So I know there's a lot of moisture in the air. So I tend to have mine at the presets work great for me. But if you're a drier area, you know, a hotter environment, colder environment, you are able to manually adjust those settings. So for me, from my point of view, the best use case for this, for any dryer in that matter, is going to be to use it in tandem while you're printing. That's when you're going to get the best benefit of this, because you're actively using a dry or drying spool while you're printing, and the filament's already slightly preheated, so it does come out a little bit warm. so it's going to work even better when it comes through the hot end and out the nozzle. That is my recommendation. It's what works great for me. I have had no issues at all. I've been using this Creality dual dryer for about a week now, and I've no issues. I completely, utilizing it while printing out of the box immediately from the get. I dried like 15 or 16 rolls and then immediately put 2 rolls of PETG in there and then put them in drying while using in my printer at the same time. And also make sure where you place your filament dryer next to your printer, front, behind. You know, some people do shelves above and below. PTFE 2 is not super long. The one that comes with it comes with 2. I think they're about 2 feet long. Make sure you have it placed to where the filament or anything's not going to get snagged, or like the spool's not going to be at like a sharp angle inside the dryer coming out into your printer. So make sure you utilize it in a good spot. And I always try to sit through like the first 10-15 minutes of the first time I print with its location to make sure that it's not going to have any of those issues. All right, let's do a quick test print. So I'm going to print the same model twice. I'm going to do one with the spool as is, and then I'm going to do once after drying the spool. So we're going to be listening for popping and watch the extrusion. Wet filament often looks inconsistent, like it's not laying down cleanly, which I have had tons of problems with this already. And then here we're going to use a spool that has been dried through a time lapse of it running, and I'm going to show you guys here on the screen sped up time lapse of a dried spool. And then now look at the difference. Smoother walls, a little bit of less fuzz, fewer random blobs, and the print just looks more controlled. Will drying fix every issue that you have with your filament or printer? Absolutely not. But if you start noticing your prints getting worse and worse over time, drying your spool is going to be one of the best things, one of the highest ROIs that you can have with your printer from the get. I would absolutely recommend having a filament dryer, especially if you're someone that prints often like I do. It makes complete sense for you to have one, especially if you're like me and you want to use one to print straight from the dryer into the printer. That is the highest recommendation I can give you, is to use it as that way. Drying is only half the battle in my opinion. So if you dry your spool and then you place it right back in the same wet, humid area that you already store all your other spools, you're gonna get reverted right back to square one. I always recommend buying like those they're like cereal bins, which I have mentioned in one of my earlier videos. I recommend buying some of those to dry them and then place them in those containers to sit with Orbeez if you want, especially if you have a ton of rolls of filament and you don't have one of those massive filament dryers. Dry 1 or 2 spools at a time and then place them in those containers. Protect it that way, because you don't want to waste 8 hours drying a spool and then throw it on the shelf and then it's back to being wet filament in a day or two, and then you're back to having the same issues. So quick tip. I also should mention that desiccant packs are highly recommended as well, especially after you dry them and then put them in an airtight container for storage. Always put desiccant packs in there. You can buy them super cheap on Amazon. I can put a link in the description for all that stuff. It'll be down below. So for me, one of the biggest benefits of having one of these is going to be printing directly from the dryer into your printer, especially for PETG and TPU. Those are going to be the 2 filaments that most people are going to see the biggest benefit from, especially TPU.
If you know.
You know what I mean? TPU, am I right, dudes? Whenever you are drying TPU and PETG, don't go blasting your heat. We don't want to go blasting the heat, cranking that bad boy up all the way up to the top and then work it that way, because faster isn't always better. Just like your prints,
Slower is better. It's okay.
And also remember, the drying of the filament doesn't replace your bad settings either. So always verify that you have good settings for the types of filaments that you are using. And I do have a video for the best PLA settings on the Bambu A1 Mini. I'll link that video here or here, one of these spots. So in the end, who is this going to be for? If you're somebody that prints in just PLA occasionally, you're probably not going to need a filament dryer. I always still recommend everybody have at least a single filament dryer, at least a single one. But if you're somebody that prints in PETG and TPU regularly, or lives in a humid area, a more humid climate, anywhere along the equator, Florida, whichever, highly recommended having a filament dryer would be a huge benefit to all of your prints. And guys, I was not sponsored by Creality. I did purchase this filament dryer with my own money. I believe it was, at the time of filming, it was $89.99, at least on Amazon. I will drop the link in the description for the dryer and for the desiccant packets. This was my review of the Creality Space Pi filament dryer. And for me personally, I highly recommend it for anybody that, if you're printing regularly, regardless of filament type, I think it's recommended for you to have one of these. You can pick one of mine up in the description below, or you can pick another one up. There's tons and tons of different brands of these. I just like Creality. From my research, they're solid, like super reputable, good customer service. I thank you guys for being here. If you would, guys, please like and subscribe if you like this content. I appreciate you guys being here, and I will see you guys next time.